Dear Jimmy, I'm writing to you in desperation as I'm struggling with a situation at work that is deeply upsetting me. As a Black woman working as a project planner in my company, I have been excluded from important meetings by my project director, Paul. Despite raising this issue with him and my peers, Paul continues to dismiss my concerns and even goes as far as calling me too sensitive. This constant exclusion has left me feeling undervalued, unsupported, and even invisible in my role as a project manager. As someone who is passionate about project management and strives to excel in my work, this exclusion has made it incredibly difficult for me to do my job effectively. Paul is a highly skilled and respected member of the company, which has made me hesitant to push this issue further. But the truth is that I feel like my skills and contributions are being overlooked and undervalued because of my race and gender. I feel like I'm being punished for simply existing and trying to do my job to the best of my ability. It's an incredibly disheartening and demotivating feeling, and I'm struggling to see a way out of the situation. I would be grateful for any advice or support you could offer me in navigating this difficult and painful situation. As a woman in the workplace, it can be incredibly hard to feel like your voice is being heard, and I'm struggling to find a way to make myself heard in this situation. Thank you for your help. Sincerely, Ty. Hello, Ty. I'm sorry this is happening to you, and I really just want to affirm that the way you're being treated is not okay, and it's not your fault. It sounds like you have taken some steps to ask to be invited. It sounds like your peers are aware what's going on, that you're not coming to those meetings, and you have had this conversation with Paul. He's called you sensitive. So I think the question about wanting to be heard by him, maybe what you mean is you want him to change what he's doing, opposed to being heard, because it sounds like he is being heard, because you've said he's replying, he dismisses the concerns and has gone as far as calling me too sensitive. I feel like the thing to point out here is I don't believe it's possible to change anybody's behavior. And I feel like it puts us under a lot of pressure to feel like we've got to keep finding a way to change behavior from someone who's treating you very badly. And I will say that Paul is treating you incredibly badly. For those who don't know what a project planner is, a project planner's job is to manage, I guess, to plan the schedule of all the activities in a project. And they're often used in larger, more complicated projects. They work with a project manager to be able to, make sure we're delivering on time, and all the hundreds of people who make this project happen and all the resources are coming together at the right time. So they work closely with a project manager. And so this project director, that's Paul's role, is choosing not to have her support in those meetings, I guess, in the project meetings. And so for a critical role like that to be excluded, it's very telling. It's like, it's like a wedding planner having a wedding meeting and not inviting the groom, or, it's like, it's a key role. I mean, there's two parties for a wedding, the bride and the groom. So it's like, so not a proper analogy, but if you have a better analogy, I'd love to get one for what the role of project planner plays. So you mentioned to him, and he continues and dismisses. And it would be incredibly upsetting to be left out of meetings, and everyone else in your team is going, even people who are not as necessary, but you're being left out. That has happened to me in my career, and it's painful. You talk about not wanting to escalate it up the chain, and that's going to be your choice. But just to give some context about whether or not you should, before I tell you what I would do, what I think you might want to consider, is that you shouldn't be. It's unfortunate, and it's actually quite sad that you're in a place where you have to be the one to push this. The fact that your colleagues and your peers aren't raising this and escalating it leads me to believe that you probably are not in the healthiest of workplaces, because if they were so unhappy with what was going on, they should have raised this issue as well. And they're not. And this is how, people feel isolated. This creates an unhealthy and a very exclusionary environment, because basically they're isolating you by agreeing it's terrible, but actually not doing anything. Because if your colleagues, if everybody in the team went to complain to HR, this wouldn't happen. They'd get this resolved, but they're not going to. They've left it down to you to do, to now push this forward yourself. So I want to say that it's a painful thing to now have to, despite being excluded, there's additional pain of not really being supported by your team, and now having to be the one to now fight a very well respected, well regarded project director in your organization when you already feel undervalued. And the challenge of that is doing that in a way that's measured and not showing any emotion when you feel very emotional. And it's hard. I'm not great at doing that. But I just want to affirm that it's a difficult step going ahead. If you choose to, by all means, I mean, I think document what's been going on, get some advice. If you have if they're we can talk, I can get some advice. I can give some resources away, you can get some advice from. But also recognize that if you choose that you just don't have that in you, that's also fine. You know, one of the things that I definitely encourage anyone in work, wherever they are, is to not let somebody else be the center of their happiness. And to know that your value isn't determined by this person, by what Paul thinks of you, or even how you do in this job. That does not define your worth and your contribution to society. And it feels like that, you know, if the organization is allowing Paul to do that, and he's getting away with that, that actually is quite telling about the kind of company you're working in. And I think the question maybe to ask is, you know, how safe do you feel there? And what kind of long-term damage could this do to you in that space? And put in the other support you need outside of work. If you have access to counseling, counseling, therapy, even a safe support group where you can talk about this, I think find those spaces and talk about it. So you're getting that stress and the anxiety out in a supportive environment, in a safe space. That's really important, whether or not you choose to report what Paul is doing. I think if you do make the reporting, if you do report, I would say be optimistic but real, but have no expectations on what's going to happen, or whether that's how that will be resolved. I think just do the work and knowing your values independent of how the company may or may not resolve it. Because otherwise that could make you feel even worse if it doesn't get resolved the way you would like. All right. So getting that support network, that support system is really going to be important for you. Knowing who you really are independently of how you're being seen at work is also really important. So if you're in the job, because of course we all need to earn a living, being able to affirm yourself of your own worth and your value, and having that space to just to cry and talk and just talk it out in the meantime. Yeah, that's the advice I have. Let me know how it goes, and hopefully I'll see you around.